Uh, Good morning. My name is Tom DeKeyser. I'm Superintendent of Whitmore Lake Public Schools. This is the 951st Zoom meeting of the 2020 calendar year. This is probably our third or fourth Q&A specific to parent questions about our preparedness planning and our virtual academy and our in-person instruction plans. Maria, would you please share that virtual document? And I'll just use that as a guide to get started while they can look at it and they can add to it if they want to, or add questions in the chat if they want to. All right, so again, this is just a kind of a big skeleton, but we are rolling out registration. You should have received a document from us, a link called School Mint. We are requesting people enroll using that new online format, and right out of the gate, if you want to be in our virtual academy, you got to let us know. We've put a deadline in for the 21st. That's this Friday. And the reason we did that is simply because we need to be able to staff this thing appropriately, and we need to know what our capacity is. I will say some people have asked if that can be extended. You can enroll at any point in time, but I mean, we have capacity in all of our programs. So we're asking that to be done by the 21st so we know how best to prepare. So what exactly is our virtual academy? I've kind of broken up into three groups. The first group is what I call lower elementary, or K3. Angela, if you could not mute, you could just mute your microphones, please. So we've broken things up into three different groups. K3 is the first group, the youngins. Originally what we rolled out with our virtual program was purely a contracted model, with WLPS being the kind of the mentor of all of this. And what we got right away was feedback from parents that said we'd really like it if there could be some classroom teachers associated with that. So we retooled, and essentially we went back out on the market and tried to figure out if we could do that. And yeah, we thought that we do have the capacity. We've dedicated some staff members already to it. And so the first question that we get right away: would the teacher or staff member be the same person as in person or virtual? So in other words, if you're a first grade parent and you enrolled in our virtual academy, would you have a virtual teacher who is also a first grade teacher? And the answer is no. You will have a WLPS teacher who's certified in that grade level, but it won't be the exact same teacher. Our in-person teachers are not going to be our virtual academy teachers. Our virtual academy teachers will work for us. They'll be certified for us. They're already employed by us, and they'll work closely with your classroom teacher, but they won't be the same. And the reason we did that is we don't want our in-person teachers doubling up, doing double duty, but we want our staff members to work with the classroom teachers to stay on track as much as possible. And that's just for transitioning purposes. We're anticipating that some people will sign up for in-person and maybe want to switch to virtual. And we're anticipating that as the semester comes to an end, people in virtual will want to come back to in-person, and we don't want huge gaps in our curriculum. So it was good feedback, and I'm happy that we could accommodate and put our own teachers in there. Next question comes up about daily attendance and how flexible can the hours be. Are parents expected to have children ready at school times? Yeah, I'm going to get to that with synchronous and asynchronous instruction a little bit. But I'll just say, yeah, the expectation in virtual academy is that you are prepared to work with your virtual teachers via Zoom meetings. Those meetings will start at normal school times. You won't be expected to be on the computer the entire time, but the synchronous instruction that you do with the teacher, you will have defined times for it. A follow-up question that people often is, can I have a schedule? Depends on what grade level you're in, but our elementary, our K3 typically starts at about 9 o'clock, and that's about when we would expect instruction to start. In all of our descriptions of virtual, we're talking about primarily core courses for anything below high school or anything below credit bearing classes. Some people have asked if, yeah, I know I am getting a sign that our signal's weak, but I think it's back now. So if there's anything I missed, please let me know. But I'm going to move on to primarily core classes. Our K3 will really cover the 4 core classes. We won't be introducing art and music and PE into our virtual academy at those grade levels. Some parents have asked about the impact of standardized testing. The newest state legislation on how we're supposed to roll out education this year does require that school districts pick what they call a benchmark assessment. I expect that we'll be using NWEA testing. I haven't seen the list that they said we could pick from yet. They haven't produced it in full yet, but I'm expecting classroom benchmark assessments, and also I'm expecting MAP testing to occur. And then as you get into 3rd grade, I am expecting that we'll be doing state testing as well. They haven't given us those benchmarks just yet. But our goal in doing any of that testing is always just compare what we think our curriculum is measuring versus what the state thinks the curriculum is supposed to measure, and to make sure that we're always on the same page. Then we get into synchronous and asynchronous instruction. I'm reading a comment right now in a chat because apparently I did break up, but and it came right when I was talking about primarily core courses. If you're enrolled in our virtual academy, no, we're not offering art and gym and music at this time. We're just rolling out core coursework. We're looking at reading, writing, math skills, social studies, and science lessons. A lot of people ask me what synchronous and asynchronous instruction means. Basically, synchronous instruction is in sync with the teacher. We're trying to sync it up as much as we can with what's going on in the classroom. So we don't want the virtual academy students to get way behind or to go off in a different direction. So we are trying to sync it with what happens in the classroom. We call that sometimes our scope and sequence of our curriculum. But in terms of synchronous instruction and asynchronous, synchronous means that you're following along with the teacher. And you should expect some of that to happen with Virtual Academy. There will be times when the teacher says, I expect you to be on a Zoom meeting at 9 o'clock. For first graders, we're going to introduce a reading lesson. And then that lesson will stop, and the students will have time to work in an asynchronous or without the teacher, just independently on the assignment. And then the teacher can come back at a later date and give feedback on those assignments. That's how asynchronous and synchronous works. Will there be a schedule? Yep. Those schedules are being developed. That's why it's really important to know how many kids we have in each group. We're trying to grade group them and possibly do a little bit of grade cohort intermingling in a virtual setting. Will there be flexibility in times? With times, a lot of parents ask that. They say, I signed up for Virtual Academy, but I work. Do I have to be there? Yeah, if you've got a young student, the expectation is that you're there with your student, helping them get logged on, and the expectation is that some of these classes will start in the morning, some will start in the afternoon. The asynchronous or the independent work that students do, that doesn't have to be done, in a particular time frame, but it's very likely that a 9 o'clock meeting, um, might be followed up with asynchronous activity where you're just working independently. Your sons and daughters can do that by themselves or with your guidance, but then the teacher is going to probably get together the very next day and give some feedback on what those assignments covered. I do get questions more and more about students with special needs. Some of them get pretty specific. So if you're signed up for our virtual academy and you do have an IEP that really involves some kind of physical or occupational therapy or some kind of speech therapy where we might need to see you, we are going to build in times where you can visit the school. And that's, I believe, in our special education FAQ that was put out this week. I get questions about use of your own device. So the district is purchasing Chromebooks and iPads. I believe our iPads will be available. Chromebooks have been delayed across the country. We're all struggling to make sure we get our devices on time. And but the idea is that if you need a device for virtual instruction, we will have one for you. You don't necessarily need to use our devices. I think most of our instruction is going to be through Google Classroom, and we'll have some other components. Even our U of M roadmaps that I'll talk about in a minute use Google Classroom. Most devices get that on. You won't need one of ours, but if you don't have one and you need it to fulfill this, our expectation is that we'll have one for you. I'm going to go to the chat and answer a question that just followed up on something I just said. Will the times be after school hours like last semester? We tried to stick to a schedule, having the meetings all at different times. This is where it's a little different, Jen, from what we did in the spring. What we did in the spring really tried to take into account that not every family had an individual device for each student. So expecting a third grade, fifth grade, and seventh grade student to all get on at 9 o'clock and go through an instructional activity when there might only be one device in the household just was inappropriate from my standpoint. So I did require staggering of lessons, even required teachers go into evening hours to stagger some of it. With this new approach where everyone's going to have a device, we don't feel as confined to flexing those hours. So we feel like a third grader, a fifth grader, and a seventh grader could all log on at 9 o'clock and do something different. So our school hours are going to be very similar to what our normal school hours would be. They're really good follow-up questions. Thank you for your attention to all these. Our virtual academy at this grade level, use Seesaw, Google Classroom. Why Seesaw? It was kind of the best option for the devices we had, with more Google or with more Chromebooks and with the use of Google Classroom, we might not need to use as much Seesaw, but we are evaluating that. The goal is to try to eliminate it, but it does have its role for younger students, especially kindergartners. Zoom meetings with other parents in their virtual classroom will be utilized. Again, a lot of people ask this. I've said this a few times, but it's worth repeating. Will students be able to meet only with their virtual students, other virtual students? Yes, that's the idea. You won't be synced with an in-person classroom. In the virtual academy, you'll be syncing with other students who are in the virtual academy, mostly in your grade group. Question following up, probably this is for in-person. Are in-person classrooms being limited for the amount of students? Yes, we're trying to. I mean, there are some rules that we butt up against. I mean, if you live in the within the boundaries of Whitmore Lake Public Schools and you're a resident of our school district, you have a civil right to attend our schools. Um, that being said, we also participate in a choice program. We did see an influx of kindergarten students in our choice program. In response to that, we added another kindergarten section. When we started to see more influx of students in our other classrooms, first through eighth grade, we did immediately restrict school of choice. And the idea behind that was to minimize the number of students in the classrooms for safety reasons. I think that's what your question's addressing. So yes, we are trying to limit it. But again, if you live in our school district, you have a right to come to our school district. And the district's obligation is to respond to that accordingly. A lot of rumors of influx of South-lying kids coming in. No, that's not. There's not a lot of kids. We do a lot of school of choice work back and forth with South Lyon, Brighton, Ann Arbor, Pinckney, and Dexter. Most of that happens at the high school. So we are seeing some high school kids want to choice in from South Lyon, but we do have more room there and we're not restricting that. It's not really an issue from South Lyon at our elementary. We did see a lot of Ann Arbor kids early and some Dexter kids early, but you know, like I said, we've restricted K through 8 to manage that better. Again, for the safety and well-being of our staff and students, we want to limit how many kids are in person. Good questions. Let's see, we covered Zoom meetings, daily parent involvement, monitoring, guidance. So we do expect to communicate with parents every single day in this virtual academy. This is not going to be a Zoom meeting kind of thing. This is typically an email or an update of progress. So we just want you to know if you have to work, if you have a student maybe in, who's doing some independent work, or you let them try it independently, we want you to know what we're seeing versus what you're seeing, because we know parents are new to this just like students are new to it. So, and sometimes the students pick it up faster and can find the loopholes quicker than the parents can keep a handle on it. So our intent is not to have daily meetings, Zoom meetings with parents. Our intent is just to communicate with parents daily on progress. And that's typically through emails and progress reports. I did introduce a new vendor that the last time we got together and talked, I just was talking about Edgenuity and contracting with them. We are still going to use Edgenuity at upper grade levels to some degree, but with our own teachers getting involved, we're really trying to sync up our own classroom instruction scope and sequence with our virtual classroom scope and sequence. But with, you know, with multiple subjects being offered, we wanted something to supplement at the younger grades, give kids some chances to do some independent exploration without a synchronous activity associated with it. And so we've locked in on what we call what's called U of M roadmaps, and you can Google it. It's a pretty neat device that was built from the University of Michigan and does utilize Google Classroom, so there'll be some limitations depending on the grade level, but it's a pretty good collection of activities and exercises. I've got a lot of chat questions going in, so I'm going to go back up and try to answer those. Can you share context of a day in the life of Virtual Academy? I really, it's not ready for to put into a hard copy yet, Ryan, but I'll give you kind of an overview at this grade level, and it's really the same at really up through 8th grade, but the older you get, the more synchronous instruction you should expect. In other words, you would have probably 2 or 3 hours of synchronous instruction at an upper grade level. At a lower grade level, not so much. You'd probably have 1 hour of synchronous instruction, maybe starting at 9 o'clock if you're in 1st grade, and then you'd have an hour or two of asynchronous work to do, and then an after lunch meeting where we would do another synchronous blast of information and learning. Um, um, Reading, writing, math skills are a big focus in those early grades, and we'd like to hit those daily if possible. But the most synchronous instruction that you should expect at the lower grade levels would be between 2 and 3 hours at the most. So I know a lot of people want to see a schedule. I want to see how many people are in each grade group, so we can match teachers up with each grade group. Sending my kids depends on the number of students in each classroom, second and sixth grade. Do you have approximate numbers? I think I do in my, but honestly, I don't have it right in front of me right now, so I'm not going to answer the question. But I know it's a big issue on people's minds. I just can't give you an accurate number. If I say it's 15 in sixth grade, and tomorrow it becomes 20, I don't want you to hold me accountable for that, because that stuff happens all the time early in the year. And I would recommend, if that is the number one reason, that's it, I would recommend you sign up for the virtual, and as we get closer, if it looks like the numbers are appropriate, before school starts, you can make that switch back to in-person. And remember, you do have a couple weeks of time that we've built in. If you start virtual and you know your sixth grade son or daughter is in a classroom with very few kids, you have a couple weeks to get out of that and join the in-person instruction. If in-person classes get shut down, will those students also join the virtual academy? Would that be the in-person teachers? So this is a good question, John. The answer is no. If you're in virtual academy and the district has to go to remote learning because of a quarantine situation, or a classroom or a grade level that your son or daughter is in, you stay in your virtual academy block. The rest of the kids move to a remote learning block. Will there be an app like PowerSchool for us? So you can see, yes. So if you're in our virtual academy, you're one of our students. We'll have attendance and grade input just like every other student would. There's a question to follow up. For in-person, are they still going to do PE? Are there any other school activities that are being limited? PE will look a little bit different. Certainly we'll be outside more, and we're designing our elementary school facilities for inclement weather PE. But yes, we're having all of our activities. Music and art will come to the classrooms. Kids will go to PE, but we'll be separated and spaced out, and we'll utilize outside activities much more than we have in the past. Is there a fee to participate in the virtual academy? No, these are free public school programs provided by Whitmore Lake Public Schools. I'll get to high school in just a second. High school is a unique entity. We've been doing virtual learning at the high school for years, and I'll speak to that in a minute. Does the Amazon wish list for staff cover the teachers who are doing the virtual academy? I don't know how to answer that. I'm gonna let I'll get with Maria and follow up on that, because I think most of the supplies that we're getting for that are focused on in-person instruction. I'm going to move on to, well, I'll answer the last question I had on my list, is why 2 weeks? Why is there a semester requirement? Why is it only 2 weeks before you can bail out of it? Is there any flexibility with this? So again, my task is to produce a quality virtual program for the parents who are requesting it. And a large component of that is staffing and developing curriculum. And I can only go so far with the development if it's constantly in flux. So I can do some reverse engineering based on your wants and needs, But at some point, the rubber has to hit the road, and I've got to make sure it's a quality program, and it can only do that if I know how many kids in each grade level, so I can staff it appropriately. But I'm really trying to put myself in your shoes, and knowing that you're making a decision where you don't have all the information, and that's very stressful for parents. So I've created this 2-week window. I'm trying to extend it, but it's really, once you sign contracts with some of these vendors, I mean, they need to make money too, so they're resisting. But I can get 2 weeks, and that gets us to September 22nd if we start on September 8th. And so that's as much as I can do right now. Will there be flexibility? Um, Again, if I had to answer right now, no, it's a semester commitment, and you really should go into it with that mindset. Um, and I hate to keep adding caveats, but I keep saying this, in this environment, in this context with which we're working, things change all the time. So as I get new information, I'll certainly share it with you, but you should make your decision knowing that this is a semester-based decision. If I move into 4th through 8th grade, really the questions that you're asking are all the same. And so I've just put, if it's the same, I've just put same as K3. I won't answer it again. If you really didn't hear the answer the first time, I'll certainly be willing to go over it. But the question I get when you get higher is what's the difference between a mentor teacher? We've said that the classes will be supported by a staff member, a grade level teacher, or a mentor. When you get into higher grades, we might be using an Edgenuity class if it suits the needs of the student better. And an Edgenuity class is a contracted class through a private vendor. Those are asynchronous instructions. You watch videos, you do it on your own time. It works, quite frankly, with some people's schedules and their learning styles better as they get older. And in those situations, what we're paying for is we're paying for a teacher. They're not a WLPS employee. We want a WLPS employee associated with all learning, though, so we assign a mentor to your son or daughter if that's the class they're taking. I'm going to follow up on a chat question. I just want to make sure the first week of school is all half days. Yes, for in-person instruction, we're starting the school year for all grade levels on half days. Angela's asking, how will the learning be individualized? She was ahead in some areas last year and was given things appropriate rather than being locked into what the majority of the class is doing. And I'm assuming you're speaking to the virtual academy. So yes, I mean, we're not abandoning our mission when it comes to educating kids. It doesn't matter if you're in a virtual academy or if you're in an in-person classroom. If there are individualized learning needs that need to be attended to, we are going to prepare a plan to meet those needs. So that doesn't change. Daily attendance in upper grades 4 through 8, it's the same. Again, I mentioned that you should expect more synchronous instruction as you move into higher grade levels. At the 7th and 8th grade level, we are starting to introduce electives for virtual academy kids. We are dedicating at least 1 hour, and expect that to be a contracted Edgenuity class. Someone asked, if you're in the virtual academy, can you participate in band? I don't think so. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure the thought process of why you'd avoid in-person but then want to do band. But certainly, if that's an issue, please maybe reach out to me personally on that one, because I have to understand the question more. It's come up a couple of times. But we do have a variety of Edgenuity electives that we'd offer each 7th and 8th grade student. If you have a younger student that you think needs a particular elective, I might be able to accommodate as well. But the Edgenuity contract, I don't believe goes below 7th grade right now. So if you're interested in elective, you might have to bump up and take a higher elective. I'm going to jump back into our chat room. Our start times for younger grades the same as the higher grades? Are they still the same as last year? We are keeping the same schedule as we did last year. So start times are the same. I have had some requests for that to change, but quite frankly, I feel like we're changing everything else. So I did decide to keep the schedule the same as last year. So that means 5th and 6th grades start at the same time as our high school and middle school students. And then our K4 students start an hour later. Everything else with grade levels 4 through 8 are the same. Again, until you get to the vendor we're using, the higher up in grade you go, the less U of M road mapping we'll use. When you get into 7th and 8th grade, expect some of your electives and even, if appropriate, some of your content, core content to come from Edgenuity. That will be a decision based on the needs of the student. Our goal is to try to get a WLPS teacher in front of all of our kids in all of our core classes. A couple of chat questions to follow up on. Will the virtual teacher they get in the beginning be the same all semester? Yes, unless there's a resignation or something. Yes, we have already dedicated some of our staff members to it. If we have to add some, we will, but our goal is to keep you in touch with one person, possibly 2 or 3 people. Again, as you get higher, you'll get some content specialists, but the goal is to keep you with those people all year. Question about lunch pickup option. Yes, we are working on that. We are, again, with doing half days, we'll have a breakfast option. And when you do half days, your lunch, of course, doesn't happen. But we recognize that in this context, like a grab and go or a bag lunch might be appropriate. And so we are working to have that available for you on day 1. And really, if you're a virtual academy student and you need those food options, those will be available to you as well. The issue with food this year and any kind of pickup is going to be, it'll probably be something where you have to tell us in advance if you're picking it up, so we know how much to prepare. I'm going to keep rolling down. Again, if you missed any of these, please feel free to ask, even if you think it might have been asked before. It's okay to ask it again. When you move into the upper grades, you start getting into a lot of extracurricular activities. Some of our extracurricular activities are moving forward. Some of them have been suspended. I would say we're in kind of a wait and see mode right now. We'll offer sports, and then that fit the MHSAA guidelines. When we feel comfortable to start introducing the extracurriculars, we'll do that as well. But if all the sports get canceled, then we plan on shutting down all of our extracurriculars as well. Again, here's a question I have, and I don't mind these scenarios. They sometimes kind of craft people's thinking and really hone in an answer. So I have a 3rd and a 5th grader. Our drop-off time's different. I'm reading the paper. I'm a little confused on school times. Drop-off times for 3rd grade is about an hour later than the 5th grade. So it's the same as last year, but you didn't have a 5th grader last year. So 5th grade would start at approximately 7:50, and 3rd grade would start at approximately 8:50. Drop-off times, I believe, are going to be 7:40 and 8:40. And the reason we're modifying that is to minimize congregation in hallways. Good question about the device pickup. So we do have devices that we have probably 2/3 of all the devices we need, the last third of which we were told will be delayed. So we're not giving out information on it yet because we don't have all of them. Every school district around is struggling with getting Chromebooks. They're the backbone of our remote and virtual learning, and we're being told that the earliest we'll get them is next Friday. I see a question in the chat about band. Band really isn't part of Virtual Academy. Can you choose another elective in lieu of band? Yes. The idea is to put out a class roster. Once we get all of our kids grade level cohorted for Virtual Academy, if you're in 7th and 8th grade, we'll then give you a list of some electives that you can choose from. They're more diverse than what we sometimes offer in our buildings, but they're not going to be taught by a WLPS teacher. Those electives will be taught by an Edgenuity instructor with a mentor supporting for assistance. And again, if you're interested in something we only offer in the building, please let me know. Again, I haven't had a lot of those questions, but I'd like to explore what needs and what wants you have in that regard. Edgenuity is the contractor. If you want to Google it, we do have some information, I think, that we'll be putting on our website so you can see class listings. Here's another question. Is there anything additional that students would need to do beyond Virtual Academy to be prepared to go back into a classroom in January? So if you are, I'm assuming you're going to enroll in the Virtual Academy, and then if everything kind of starts to settle down, you move into more of a comfort zone, you'll move back into a classroom setting in January. No, our goal is in creating the Virtual Academy, as I've described, is really to sync it as much as possible with the scope and sequences that our classroom teachers are following. We know there's going to be, you're going to be off a little bit. There's no way we can be exact with, you know, what we call the power standards that you'll be covering, the really important key items for learning that you'll be covering in each core subject at each grade level will be really identical to what the classroom in-person teachers are doing. So if you jump back with us in January, you'll be either a little bit ahead or a little bit behind, but nothing we can't quickly correct. Here's a question about masks. The mask questions. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my child will wear a mask from the car at drop-off until she gets to her 3rd grade classroom. At that point, she's no longer required to wear the mask. Yes, you have to wear the mask coming into the building in all common areas. And once you get to your classroom, the way we've set up our classrooms, the way it's been scheduled, you're not moving at all. Once you get in that classroom, you stay in that classroom. The only time you leave really is to take a bathroom break or to go to recess. Lunch will be brought into your classroom, or you might go to the cafeteria, grab it and bring it right back with your grade, but you're always with that grade. So the requirements state that you can take that mask off. I am beefing that up a little bit, and I'm saying to the classroom teachers, that's true if a student's working independently at his or her desk, the mask at that grade level can come off. Any type of interaction, though, if you want them to come together and do any kind of group work, the mask should go back on. So that's why we're advocating for, even though it's been controversial lately, the neck gaiters. It's a real easy thing to put up and down, but yes, by law, they don't have to, K4, wear the masks in the classroom. I think it's safer and more appropriate if we require it if they're doing group work, though. Do you have any, do we have to have the ability to print materials at home? No, print materials would be given to you. Extracurricular activities we covered, semester we covered. Couple of high school questions. Really, not trying to be ambiguous with this, but again, if the virtual academy doesn't get real specific at the high school level, because it really is, it's so dependent on the grade level you're at and what your career and college goals are. Um, you know, 11th and 12th grade students, they get very specific. Everyone takes AP classes, and a lot of kids start to take career tech classes. They're going to have to be in person. They might be at Brighton High School for an hour and a half in the morning. They could take a couple virtual classes with Whitmore Lake mid-morning, and they could be taking a Washtenaw Community College class virtually or in person in the afternoon. And so really kind of a one-size-fits-all approach just doesn't work. It might work a little bit easier at the 9th and 10th grade level, but even that has some nuances to it. So so we're not getting real specific. We're just saying if you're in 9th through 12th grade and you want our virtual academy, go ahead and sign up for it. We're going to reach out to you and say, this is what we think, based on what your EDP says, based on what we know of your career and college plans are, we're going to give you a schedule that we think fits you best, and then let you give us some feedback on that. Let's see here. I missed a question. Will there be dividers between desks? I've seen some classrooms that have put up protectors for extra precaution. No, we're spacing out all of our classrooms. Right now, we think we have enough room where we can really distance kids. Again, as you get in some of the upper grades, the distance really looks like 5 and 6 feet apart. So that's kind of right in line with what the health department has recommended. When you get in the lower grades, it looks more like 3 to 5 feet apart. But we are limiting kids to 2 per round table, and so that's far enough apart that we don't think we need the dividers. But again, I mentioned this before. Someone asked me a question about a 3rd grade student wearing a mask. I have told all K4 teachers that when students are working independently, the masks are down. We don't have to have them up, and we think it's appropriate to take breaks and long breaks from these masks at that grade level. If they start doing choice time, if they want to bring a few kids together and that distance is compromised, and they have to be like 1 and 2 feet apart, the mask should be worn at that point, and I think that's an appropriate precaution. But we will not be putting dividers between desks at this time. Okay. Again, I'll give you guys a minute to think if you want to add anything else to the chat. We're going to continue to kind of work through our FAQs. Please, if you I know some of these decisions about virtual academy are challenging. Again, if you're on the fence about it, you think it's the right thing to do as a parent, that's what your gut's telling you. We've tried to build in safeguards for you so you can change your mind as the weeks go on. The reason we have the August 21st deadline for signing up for it is so we can build a higher quality program for you. We can make sure we take care of the needs as best as we can. And knowing how many people are at each grade level allows us to do that. Is there a date for releasing class sizes? Look, we typically don't release class sizes ever, but I know this is a new a new world that we're living in right now, and I know it's just burning on people's brains. So I'll try to put something together as we get closer and closer to school, but really don't expect anything until just before August 31st, because it changes every single day. And that's really true of every single year. I mean, it goes up and down. Every time you look at Power School, you see new enrollments, you see people change at the last second, and it's different at each building. But again, I know it's really important to people. We'll by open house, we'll start to have a pretty good idea. But I really don't want people, if you're making a decision based on whether there's 15 versus 20 kids per classroom, if that's going to be it, you really want to probably investigate your virtual academy as much as possible, because it does flex that much. But we are trying to keep it as low as possible. We think that's the safest way to go. Let's see if I've got any more. When we'll receive more information on Virtual Academy, for example, what time classes start. After August 21st, once I know how many people have locked in, then we're going to start creating schedules and hand those out to the people in particular. So your kindergartners will know, like, here's a day in the life of a Virtual Academy kindergarten student, and first, second, third grade, and so on. If you start in person and your child just really isn't happy in person, do you have the 2 weeks to change your mind to the virtual option? Actually, it's a little bit easier to move into the virtual. So yes, the same option is there, and I haven't put a time limit on it for moving into the virtual because of some of our abilities with catching up and doing some more asynchronous catch up. Yeah, if you start in person and you're 2-3 weeks in and you're like, I just don't like this, that's an appropriate thing to do to switch to virtual. What was the response rate on the survey? What percent, and of that, what percentage opted for virtual or was leaning toward virtual? We had about 15, let's see, maybe I can pull it up really quickly just to give you some accurate information, but total responses, I'm sorry, I didn't anticipate this question, but I think I have it for you if you just give me 5 seconds here. We're running about 65% of all families enrolled was our response rate. And about 75% said in person, and about 16% said virtual, and about 12% said leaning towards it but haven't decided yet. So it's about 75%, 25%. We are preparing open house information, and we're getting ready to send that out. Unfortunately, we're planning for some virtual options. Depending on what grade level you're at, we'd like the parents to see the teachers as much as possible. But again, we're up against some, I always call them I call them crisscross laws. Or you got executive orders that say we can't have public gatherings of more than 10, but you've got executive orders that say we can go to school. And so, we're waiting on guidance for that. But at some point, again, I've said this before, even with regard to your virtual questions, at some point you have to make a decision. And so we just said, look, with what we know right now, we can do this virtually. Let's prepare a virtual open house. And so teachers are working on that, and they're getting ready to send that stuff out. They'll be in professional development tomorrow. And so you should expect lots of communication about instructional activity and parent activity coming out in the next, and certainly in the next 4 or 5 days, because everyone's coming together tomorrow to kind of finalize a lot of these components. Let's see if I missed anything here. Will you let us know what mentor our child is assigned to? Yes, that'll come, depending on the grade level, that'll come when we establish the exact schedules. Ryan asked a question, will Apple Pens, for example, be needed for virtual academy writing activities for K-3? I would say not in third grade, possibly K-2, where we plan on using more of an iPad approach. Just to follow up on the, I think Lindsay asked about virtual or about open houses. We are certainly, kindergarten is a focus for us when it comes to our open house, because we really want them to interact. This is their first time in real school, right? So we want that to be an important day for them and to go smoothly. So we are certainly working on a way to get our kindergarten students into the school for an open house visit. That's our priority with that right now. What type of elective options will it be for 7th and 8th graders? I'll try to get a list out. That's been asked a couple times, and I mean, it can get pretty diverse. There's some foreign language options that some people want, but really I want our counselor to be aware of what you're thinking about, because if this is only a semester-based selection that you're picking, then I don't want I don't want it to mix up anything you might do if you join us for in-person instruction in the second half of the year. Can you request a mentor or have control over who your child gets as a mentor? Not right now. I have limited staff options, but Stephanie, certainly if you get assigned to somebody that you don't like, that you can't work with, you can let me know. And right now we've assigned a group of our staff to it, and I don't have a lot of choices, but it really depends on how many people at each grade level are signing up for the virtual academy. And then I'll be able to answer that question better once I get that information locked in. Okay. All right. If you don't have any more questions, again, please review the FAQs, and we'll continue to update. Hopefully we won't run into any more technical glitches like we did last Friday, but I think we've overcome all of that, and we're getting really close to making this all happen. I appreciate your patience with this virtual work. Again, I'm glad we listened to your feedback early. I'm glad we were able to adjust to it. I'm sorry that it slowed down the process a little bit, but I think overall what you were saying in mass is we want WLPS teachers. And so I think we've been able to accommodate you. And I look forward to really defining better what the schedule looks like, and getting that out to you, because I know that's important to you too. And I will, again, try for some class size once I get the class sizes, to try to get it out to you, at least in some form that'll help you with decision making. And I'll end with, yes, a question was, will there be a recording of this? We are recording it, and once it's available in the cloud, we will send it out in a link to you. And as always, you know how to get a hold of me. Call, email is probably best this time of year. So, and many of you are doing that. And so, all right, we'll shut it down in just a minute. Thank you. And again, please reach out if you have any more questions. And thanks for sticking with WLPS through this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.